In this new section, we're going to be building a car driving game in Unreal Engine from start to finish. So now we're going to be rigging our vehicle to be able to drive it in Unreal Engine. So for the rigging process, we're going to be using an add-on. It's a free add-on called Car Rig for Unreal Engine. So you're going to find it in the resources, so download it, and we have to install it. So we can just go to Edit, Preferences, and you can click on Get Extensions. On the top here, we have this icon. You can just click on it, and let's click on Install from Disk. And after that, you can just click on this vehicle rigging add-on, and it's going to be installed. So if you want to make sure that it's installed, you can press N here, and you're going to find it here, DUI for vehicle. So now we have to assign all these vehicle rigging components. We have the vehicle base, front wheel, the rear wheel, and all the wheels. So let's start with the base. This is the base or the chassis of our vehicle. So you need to make sure that the vehicle is separated, so the wheels are separated from the chassis. And also we need to make sure that, so let me just do it differently. I'm gonna just combine everything together. Control J. So let's say that your vehicle is like this. So you have to separate the wheels. So the way to separate them is by switching to the edit mode. We can just left click outside to make sure that everything is deselected. And we can press L to grab only the wheels like this. So we can press P, separate selection, and continue like this. To select the wheels, press P, separate selection, and continue the separation of the wheels. So just in case you got the wheels connected to the body. So now we have the chassis, it's separated, and we have the wheels. But also we have to do something else, which is to reset the center of origin here. Because right now, if we try to spin the wheel, you can try RX. So this is the angle that we got, which is not good. We have to change the center of origin to here, the center. So we can go to Object, Set Origin, and Origin to Geometry. So now we got it right at the center. If we try RX, can be spinning it perfectly like this. So we need to do the same move to all these wheels. So let me just select them all. And we can go to Object, Set Origin, and you can click on Geometry. But here we need to press Alt. So if you press Alt, you're going to be applying this to the entire 3 wheels. So now each wheel has its own center. And finally here for the chassis, so the center is not set right. So you can go to Object, Set Origin, and Origin to the Geometry. So now it's centered. Not centered, but this is the center of the geometry. Alright, so now we can press N and let's use that add-on. So the Unreal Engine for vehicle. So we got the vehicle base. I'm going to just click on this eyedropper. And we can pick the chassis. And the front right. Where is the front right? This is the front right. You can just select it like this and use the eyedropper. But here it says, yeah, we can rename them for better alignment. Let me just select the chassis here. We can just call it car dash base. And here we're going to be wheel point front FR. And this one is the wheel point RR, the rear right. And let's do the same thing for the other wheels. So this one is the wheel point R, it stands for rear left. And finally we got the front, so wheel point FL, front left. So let's carry on. So we got the front right, this is the rear right, and on the other side we have the front left and the rear left. So now all the names, they are matching the same names as described in the add-on. So next we have to set the unit scale for Unreal Engine. So in Blender, default unit system is 0.1. So, but in Unreal Engine, if we click on set unit scale, it's going to be 0.01. So we need to keep that in mind. So just use the unit scale. And after that, we have to scale up our vehicle. So now if you press N, jump to the item, this is the scale, which is really small. So we have to increase it by 100. But just select all the components and we can press S and let's type 100. So now actually that's too much. So let me just revert back. So S by 10. So we added 0 here. We divided it by 10. So we have to multiply it here by 10. So now it's good. We can press 1 to be facing the front. And let me just take it a little bit up until it's touching the ground. All right. So now what we need to do, we have to spin our vehicle sideways. So it needs to be facing the Y, not the X. So this is the X axis. So we can press RY, or actually RZ, and we can spin it like this. You can type 90. So now all the wheels are facing the Y, like this. So this is how it needs to be set. Because if you don't set it like this, so the bones will be facing in other direction. So this is how that add-on works. So let me just select all the components. And we can press N. And let me check. So here for the scale, it's set to 1.1. So we can apply the scale. Let me just press Ctrl A. And let's apply the scale so that it can be set to 1. So now let's jump to the add-on and we can click on Rig Vehicle. So now we generated the bones. So we can give it a try. So let me just select each bone here. And we can try to spin it. I'm going to just use the rotate. So there we go. We can rotate it. We can also spin it. We can press RZ. And let's spin it like this. So now, as you can see, it's working. Here we can press G so that we can move the entire vehicle. So everything is working just fine. So now let's do the export. I'm going to just switch from the pose mode to the object mode. So we can select the car first. And let's include the wheels. So the car first. Shift keeps pressing shift to select the wheels and press shift to select the bones. So the bones needs to be the last selected object. So after that we can go to file, export as FBX. And now let's call it just car model. And here for the settings, so you want to export the textures. So we can change this path from auto to copy so that we can have the option to embed the textures. You can see that, embed textures. And I'd like to limit the export to only what is selected. So we can just check these selected objects and let me scroll down. So here for the transform, so the forward needs to be the X forward. So we are facing here the X. So this is the X forward. And for the up, it's going to be the Z. This is the Z axis. So let me just switch from the Y to the Z up. And we don't need to have any animations. Neither for the armature, we won't going to need add leaf bones. So leaf bones are basically bones on top of other bones. So Blender will add more bones, for example here. And we don't want that. We want to keep only the bones that are generated by our plugin. So now we can just click on export. Alright, so back to Unreal Engine. So we got our game environment folder. I'd like to add a new folder. It's going to be for the vehicles. So we can do right click, go to new folder, and let's call it vehicles. And let's double click on it. And now we need to drag that FBX file of our car, the car model. We can simply drag it here. And inside our import settings, so for the textures, make sure that to import the textures as well as the materials, make sure to import them. And we can just click on import. So we can drag our car model. I'd like to drag it here, and we can tweak a little bit the materials to make them look better. So for example, the windshield, we have to make it glossy. So let me just double click on the windshield. And I'd like to get rid of, I'm going to just keep only the base color texture here. We can connect it straight to the base color. And then just get rid of all these additional nodes. And here for the metallic, we can increase it up to 0.75 to make it look a little bit darker. And for the roughness, we can take it down to something like 0.1 to make it glossy. So let me just save. And let's take a look at it. Okay, it looks fine. All right, so we got our windshield. Let me just double check the other materials. So here we have some problems with the wheels. So let me just double click on the tire here. And I want you to search or jump to this two-sided, and we can just check it. And let me just apply or save. All right, we got it. So we need to apply. We need to do the same thing to the other material, which is a tire number 1. Okay, here let's make it two-sided and save. So we can apply this two-sided to all these materials. Okay, so now it's fixed on this side. So now it's fixed. All right, so we got our vehicle. So in the next coming tutorial, we're going to make it drivable in Unreal Engine. So now it's time to make our vehicle drivable in Unreal Engine. And the first step is going to be to activate a built-in add-on. It's called the ChaosVehicle. So you can just go here to edit and plugins. And I want you to search for ChaosVehicle. Nope, I'll just correct that. So the bottom one, this one, the ChaosVehicle. You need to check this box here. And once you check it, you're going to need to restart. Can you see that? You have to restart the Unreal Engine. So here, so this message says that this plugin is in experimental version. Doesn't matter, just click on yes, and we can just restart the Unreal Engine. So after that, let me just go back to our scene here. So now we got it. So I'd like to keep everything organized. We can go back to the vehicles folder, and we can start with the new class. So we can just do right click and go to blueprint class. And at the bottom here, we have all classes. We can just expand them. And I want you to search for the wheeled vehicle pawn, this class right here, this blueprint right here. So we can just click on it and let's select it. So we can call it car_BP, that stands for blueprint. And after that, we can double click on it, and let me just expand this window. We can just maximize it, and we can select our mesh. So we have to assign our car to the mesh here. So after selecting the mesh, you can just scroll down to define the mesh skeleton, this one. And you can just click on none, and let's choose our car. So now we got our vehicle, so it's assigned to that blueprint. So you can just compile. So the next step, I'd like to add a camera behind it so that you can be able to drive it from the back like this from here. So to do that, we can select our mesh again, and let's add a spring arm. So the camera will be attached to that spring arm. We can just press Alt and left click to spin around. So we can increase the length of our spring arm. Let me just scroll down to refine the length. Make sure that you are selecting here that spring arm. So here we have the target arm length. You can just increase it to, let's say, 600, and we can move it a little bit up like this. And I'd like to spin it a little bit on the Y by 5 degrees, or actually -5. So we need to be looking at our vehicle from the top. So after that, we can select our spring arm, and let's add a camera like this. All right, so we got the camera, but the problem is that the camera is not connected to the spring arm. So let me just select the camera. We can just reset the location. Let me just give it 0. Same thing here, 0. And for the rotation, we can also reset it back to 0. So this way, it's gonna inherit. It's gonna be connected to the spring arm. So now we got it. We got the camera behind our vehicle. So you can just compile, and let's go back, and we can simply drag that blueprint here. So you're gonna have it with the camera on the back. So I'm gonna just delete my default car here. We don't gonna need it. So we're going to be working on this blueprint. So now what we need to do, I want when we play our game, I want to be facing or on the back. We need to set that camera on. So this is what we got here. This is our vehicle. So I want when I play, I want to put the camera behind like this. So to do that, we have to set up our game mode. So we can just do right click here and jump again to blueprint class, and it's going to be this game mode base. You can just click on it, and let's call it my game mode or car_game mode. And we can just double click on it, and from here we have to select that same blueprint that we created. So we need to, let me just maximize this. So this is our game mode. So on the right side here we have these default pawn class. We can just select our car blueprint. So now we're setting this game mode to our vehicle. So we can just go back, and the next thing to do, we have to assign it to our level. So what you do, we can jump here to the word settings. So if you don't see it, if you don't see this word settings, you can just go to window, and you can check this word settings. So this way you're going to be seeing it here. So you can just scroll down, and we have to assign our game mode, our car game mode. So it's by default it's set to none. You can just select the car game mode. And if you want to make sure that everything is working well, you can just check this selected game mode, and you're going to be seeing your car blueprint, this car blueprint. So right now, if we press play, so we're going to be behind our vehicle. So now we're good, but we have to set first the camera. So that's the subject of the next tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to be setting the logic for moving our camera. So if you press play right now, we cannot move our camera neither up or sideways. So to set the system of moving our car, let me just find our vehicle here. So I'd like to double click on the car blueprint. Let me just double click on it. And we got here the car blueprint. So I'm going to be selecting the spring arm, and we can jump to the event graph. So this is where we're going to be creating the logic for moving our spring arm. I'm going to just delete all these nodes that we got here, and we can simply drag our spring arm. So this is the object that we want to move. The spring arm, let me just show you this spring arm here. You want to spin it sideways and up and down. So back to the event graph. So the node that we're going to be using is the add relative rotation. So this is the node that's going to allow us to move any object. So the add relative rotation. So it's going to be for the spring arm. Let me just find this one right here, add relative for the spring arm. And we're going to be having it connected to the spring arm by default. I'll just delete that spring arm. So to help you understand how it works, let me just go back here to Blender and let me explain. So we got the camera behind our car. So we want, if we move our mouse sideways like this, we want to spin the camera on the Z-axis. Let me just explain. So R, Z, you can see which axis we are rotating around, which is the Z-axis. So that's what we want to do. So let me just go back here. We can bring our movement on the X-axis. So let me just use mouse X, this one right here, inside the mouse event. And we can connect the top slot to this slot right here. So now for the axis value. So we have to, so right here, if we go back to Blender, so we are moving the camera around the Z-axis. This axis right here, the Z-axis. So let's do the same thing here. We can simply split this delta rotation. We can just do right click and split the structure pin. And here for the axis value, I'm going to be connecting it to the delta Z. So now if you compile, and let's go back and play our game. So we're going to be able to move sideways, exactly like in Blender. So now what we need to do is to set up the movement on the up and down. So let me just go back to Blender and let's see which axis to work on. So we got our camera. So basically if we move our mouse up and down, we want to spin the camera around the X-axis, this X-axis right here, the red one. So let's go ahead and do the same thing. So back here in the car blueprint, I'm going to just duplicate the same node, which is the add relative rotation. You can select it, press Ctrl D to duplicate it like this. And I'd like to add the same mouse. It's going to be the mouse Y, this one right here. So I'm going to be connecting the top to the top like this. And for the axis, it's going to be the X axis. So we can just connect the X value to the X roll, this one right here. And for the target, it's going to be the same thing, which is the spring arm. You can just connect it here. So let me just compile, save, go back, and let's double click. So now as you can see, it's working, but it's working in a weird way. So we have to improve it. Let me just go back here and take a look at what's happening here. So basically the Y needs to be connected to the Y, not to the X. Let me just go back here and check. So the X here represents the Y because our vehicle is not spin. So we have to spin it like this. So by 90 degrees. So all the axes should be facing the Y. So that's the first rule. So by doing that, so now it's going to make sense. We have to spin around the Y axis and not the X. So we can just go back here, press Ctrl to disconnect this node, and let's connect it to the pitch, to the Y. So now we can compile and let's play. So now we can go up and down and we can spin around our vehicle. So that's perfect. So now it's time to set the physics for our vehicle. So if you press play, so it should not be sticking like this up in the air. So we have to simulate the physics so that it can be dropped to the ground. So to do that, we have to work on the collisions for the wheels and the chassis, and we have to simulate the physics. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to just jump into the skeleton here. So double click on the skeleton, and I want you to click jump to this. You can just click on the physics right here. And from here, we can see all the collisions. So what I'd like to do, I'd like to select, you can just, for example, go to the bodies and we can show all bones so that we can delete them. I'd like to start fresh. So these are the bones. I'm going to just press Ctrl to select them all. We can press delete to delete them, and we can regenerate these bones. So let me just select the first one, shift select the last one, and we can jump here to the body creation. I'd like to use not the capsule, but the sphere for the wheels. And we can just click on add bodies. So now we added spheres to each one of the wheels. And for the chassis, so we can use an advanced type of collision, which is the single convex hull. And we just add bodies. There we go. So this one looks better and it fits perfectly our vehicle. So now that's been done, let me just go back to the car blueprint, and we have now to simulate the physics. So you can select our vehicle movement component, and here we can search for physics. Actually, not here. I think it's inside the mesh. Let me just select the mesh. So we got here this simulate physics. I want you to check this box, and we can just compile. And let me try to play our game. So as you can see, we are dropping down into the ground, but as you can see, the wheels are a little bit of a mess, so we have to fix them. So at least we have the physics working. So let me just wait for it to hit the wall. No, actually, it's not hitting the wall. So we don't have collision on the side of the bridge, but as you can see, it's working. So the physics are working. So in the next game tutorial, we're going to be working on the wheels. So see you in the next game tutorial. Alright, so now it's time to work on the wheels. So if you play our game, you can see that the wheels are behaving in a weird way. So we have to set them up. So let me just press exit so that we can go back here. And I'd like to work on the wheel. So for the wheels, we have to add 2 blueprints. So you can do right click and jump to blueprint class. And let's search for wheel, the Chaos Vehicle wheel. This one right here. So I can just click on it and let's select it. So I'd like to call it, we need to have 2 types of wheels. We have the front wheels and the rear wheels. So let's start with the front. So each one has its own setup. So front wheels. So I'm going to just double click on the front here. And on the right here, we have these settings. So for the axle type, it's going to be the front. You can just set it from here. So the wheel radius, we're going to get back to it and set it up. And down below, so the front wheels needs to be affected by the steering. So you can just check that here. And so here we have affected by brake. So I'm going to just keep that. Also affected by the handbrake. Let me just check that. Affected by engine. So it's going to be front moving. And for the brakes, we can enable the ABS. All right, so we got that. So down below here, we have the setup for not the torque. So we can get back to this. Basically, that's it for the front wheel. I'm going to just compile, go back. And I'd like to duplicate the front wheel so we can select it and press Ctrl D to duplicate it. And let's call it here the rear wheels. And for the rear wheels, we can double click on it and let's set it up. So first here for the axle type, it's going to be the rear. And we have to turn off this affected by steering. We don't want to have the rear wheels affected by the steering. It's going to look really weird. So if you kept this option here that says affected by engine, so the engine is going to be powering the rear wheels too. So only if you have 4x4 vehicle. So now I'd like to set, so we got the front wheels and the rear wheels. I'd like to assign them inside the car blueprint. So let's go back to the car blueprint. We need to select this vehicle movement component. And on the right side here, let's set up the system. So I want you to scroll down until you find the wheel setup, this wheel setup here, and we can add inside the wheel setup, let's add 4. So our vehicle has 4 wheels. Also, let me just expand them. So first we need to set the wheel class. So we can just click here and let's set it up to the front. So we got the first wheels are the front and the last 2 wheels are the rear. You can just set them like this, the rear wheels. And for the names, so we have to assign the bone name. So to know the bone name, you can just go back to the physics, this car physics. So basically this is the physics. Let me just show you either the physics or the skeleton. So it doesn't matter. For example, you can just click on the skeleton and you're going to be seeing the name, the bone names. So here inside the car blueprint, so we got let me just double check the FL, the FR, the RL, and the RR. So we can just assign them here. So the first wheel is the FL, the front left. After that, we have the FR, the front right, and the rear left. This is how we name them. And the rear right. So that's been done. So we can just compile, but also we have to set up the engine setup. So let me just scroll down to define the engine setup here. And we have to set the torque. So the torque is how can we move the way we're going to be moving our vehicle. So you can just double click on it here and let's set it up as following. So let's scroll down because 1 is really low. We can increase it to 250. So something like this, 250, and we can just do left click at the center here. So we can do shift and left click so that we can add these torque nodes and you can create it like this. Create this nice curve that's going to go like this. It's not exponential, but the reverse of exponential. So exponential goes like this, but this one is the reverse of exponential. So let me just remove this and we can just compile and let's play our game. All right, so we got it dropped. So we don't have any weird movements. in our wheels. So all we have to do right now is to set up the movement of our vehicle so that we can be able to move it. So that's going to be the subject on the next coming tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to be setting up the car controllers so that we can be able to drive it. So now if you press play, so we cannot do anything. So we can go around our vehicle, but if you press any key, the W, the S, the A and D, we cannot move the vehicle. So we have to set up these controls. So first we need to add the inputs. So what we can do, we can jump here to edit and project settings. And on the left side here, I want you to search for engine, and inside it, let's search for input. You can just scroll a little bit down till you find this input tab. So just click on it. And here we have the axis mapping and the action mappings. So I'm going to be adding the first axis mapping. So let me just call it acceleration. Acceleration. And it's going to be the W. Let me just use here the W key. And the value is going to be 1. So you can add the second axis mapping. It's going to be the brakes. Let me just call it here brakes or just brake. It's going to be the S. Let me just expand it here for the key. It's going to be the S. Like this. We can start with these two and we can add more. Let me just go back here to the car drive and we need to jump into our car blueprint. So this is the one. And here we have, let's add that logic. So I'm going to be doing right click and let's add the set throttle input. This one right here. And let me just take it down. And now we need to add that acceleration input. So we can just do right click, acceleration, axis event. This one right here inside the axis event, and we can connect the input, this execution to the top, and for the axis value it's going to be setting up to the throttle. So we can just compile, but also we can, let's add the second one. It's going to be the brakes. So set brake input. You can just get rid of this vehicle movement component and use just this one for the target. No need to duplicate this node. And now let's add the brake axis event. So brake, this one, the axis event. And we can connect it to the top and axis value to the brakes. So now I can compile and then go back and play. And let's see what we got. So now if you press W, so we cannot do anything. We cannot move it. So it looks weird. But the way to fix it is by removing the other vehicle that we got here. So we should not be having any vehicle in the scene. So I'm going to just select this, press delete. And we're going to be just using our player start. So it says bad size due to, so if you move it outside, let me just take it down. So basically when moving it down, so we don't have that problem anymore, like this. We can also spin it around. So let me just press the W. Actually the E, so let me press the E to move it, to spin it, and we can spin it forward by -90 degrees. So let's play. There we go, so we got our vehicle. So let's press the W, there we go, so we can move forward, and the S can be moving backward. So now what we need to do, we need to add the steering. We have to spin sideways. So let me just press escape to go back, and we can jump into our car blueprint. And we can add the steering. So we can just do right click, so set steering input for the car vehicle. Okay, again, I'm going to be deleting this vehicle movement and use our vehicle movement node as a target. So now for the steering, so we need to go back to those inputs. Let me just jump here to the project settings. And we need to add a new axis mapping. It's going to be steering. And inside the steering, it's going to be, the first key is going to be the A. Let me just find the A, this one right here. It's going to be -1 because we are turning left using the A. And for the right, it's going to be the D. So let me just add here. We should not be adding new axis mapping. So we just need to add that new input inside the steering like this. And this one's going to be the D. Let me just find the D. And we're going to keep it at 1. Alright, so now let's go back to the car blueprint and we need to do right click, steering. Alright, so now let's add that axis event inside our car blueprint. So steering inside the axis event. And we can connect the top to the top and the axis value to the steering. So now we can play. play our game, and let's take a look. So now we can move and we can go sideways. There we go. That's good. So the last thing that we need to do is to set up the animation for the wheels. As you can see, the wheels are not moving, so we have to set them up. So let me just stop, and we're going to do that in the next coming tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to be making the wheels spin. So we need to animate the wheels. So as you can see, the car movement setup is well set, but we have to activate the wheels. The wheels are static right now. We have to make them move. So to do that, we have to create a new animation blueprint. So I'm going to be selecting here the skeleton, and we can do right click, and let's jump to create, and we can create an animation blueprint. And let me just call it here. You can call it wheel animation underscore animation. And let me double click on it. All right, so we got it. So I'd like to jump from the class default to the class settings so that we can change them here. And for the parent class, it's going to be, let me just find the vehicle chaos. Let me just search for chaos, not chaos, but vehicle animation instance. This one right here. So now we set this up. So for this outcome, so we have to set the following. So first we need to start with the mesh space ref pose. So let's search for it. So we can do right click and let's search for mesh space ref pose. This one right here inside the poses. And we need to control it or connect it to a wheel. And we need to connect it to a wheel control, so we can just drag it from here. So wheel controller for the wheel vehicle. And after that, we can connect it straight to the result like this. So that new node is going to be added, the component to local, and it's normal. So we can just compile. Now we got the flow of animation running. So now we need to jump back to the car blueprint, and we can select here the mesh. And on the right side, we have here the animation class, and we can just search for the wheel animation that we just created, this one. And let me just check this. Can just keep it as a blueprint. All right, so let's compile. So blueprint, because this is a blueprint right here. So we can just compile and let's play. And let's see. So if you move, we're gonna be able to move our wheels. So if we spin, it's gonna be working. So here we have a problem, which is the radius of the wheels are not set correctly. So what we need to do, we have to increase them up. So I think, let me just reverse back. We can jump into the car blueprint and inside the vehicle wheel. So let me just find the wheels. So actually not here, but actually inside the front wheel and the rear wheels. So inside these that we created earlier. So for the radius, I'm going to increase it here to 40. Same thing for the rear wheels. Let's increase that radius to 40. You can just compile them both, and let's play. And let's see. Okay, so now we are above the ground, which is perfect. So there we go. So this is the way to animate or to create your game inside the bridge, to rig your vehicle and make it playable inside Unreal Engine. So if you have any questions, let me just jump to the other side. There we go. Can do that. So if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in future projects. Thank you. Alright, so in this tutorial, we're going to be publishing our game so that we can be able to play it on PC. Should not leave it just as a project in Unreal Engine. So to do that, we're going to need to do some settings. So we can jump here to project settings, and here at the top we have project. So you can start with the description. If you want to change the thumbnail of your game, you can just choose any thumbnail. But what matters the most is this maps and modes. So we need to jump here, and you have to select for this editor startup map, you have to select the same level that you are using. So here the level is called drive car. So I'd like to select it here. Let me just search for drive car. So same thing here for this game default map. Let me just search for drive car. And now let's go back to our scene, and what we need to do, we need to go to platforms, and let's go to Windows, and we can switch. So by default, you can have it in the development, the configuration. So make sure that to switch it to shipping, and after that, you can just click on package project. So after that, you can choose any folder that you like. I'm going to just create a new folder here. Let's call it drive car game. And inside this folder, you can just click on this select folder. And you can just wait for this packaging project to finish. Alright, so there you go. So the packaging has completed. So inside that directory, you're going to find this folder, the car drive game. So you can just double click on it. And inside we're gonna have this new Windows folder, double click on it, and I want you to click on this car chase project. So double click on it and let's play our game. And there we go, so we got our game, it's published on Windows, so now we can play our game on PC.